On today's show, we debate which five Maple Leafs should be in the Locked On NHL's top 100 list this upcoming season. We'll get to that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. What's happening, pal? How you feeling on a Friday?
Feeling pretty good. Another dub for the Jays. And we now get some interesting NHL discussions to be had.
Yes. Let's get right into it, Dave. Let's get right into it. Let's not let's not beat around the bush when it comes to the Leafs content du jour. But before we get into our Friday 5-pack, which is fascinating, I the Locked On network has tasked all of our shows, all 32 teams, to come up with players that we feel are worthy of being in the conversation of the NHL's top 100, and we're going to collaborate and put together a top 100 list, which obviously we'll unveil to you guys. I believe it'll probably go 25 at a time, maybe, or 20 at a time, a 4-part list, 5-part list, I would assume, at some point as we get close to trading camp. But we all were tasked to come up with a few players who should be in consideration for the top 100 list. So we thought, well, let's have that discussion on air. So that's what we're going to be doing here today. Now, I think that there are 3 guys who are locks to be considered top 100, and we'll talk about, who they are and why they are considered a lock, obviously. And then there's 3 guys who I think are kind of, conversations are to be had about them. We'll get into all that today, but the ranking season in general is upon us, and NHL.com has started to put out their rankings, positional rankings every single year. They do this. The defenseman list dropped earlier this week. Not a single Maple Leaf made their top 20 list, which not overly shocked by. There's one guy who I thought, may have received some love, who we'll discuss when we talk about our top 100 possibilities, but no Maple Leafs on the list. In fact, and this is the one thing that I thought that was kind of interesting from a Leafs perspective, at least, the Leafs were the only team in the Atlantic Division to not have a representative in the top 20 defenseman list. What do you make of that?
I can understand it. Obviously, it just kind of goes to show where this blue line has kind of made strides, but also where the improvements can still lie, right? Because they've got a good collection of defensemen, but they don't have that, Victor Hedman. You can even maybe throw Charlie McAvoy, like that type of defenseman, right? Your stud number 1 guy, and it's been that way for
forever, ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. When was the last time the Maple Leafs have had a true number 1 defenseman?
Caberlet?
Was he? Yeah, that's the only guy who you could maybe consider a true number 1, but he was never like the Hedmans, the Dahlins, the McAvoys. Very good offensive player, but it's not like he was a dominant force when he was out there. So it's been a very long time since the Maple Leafs have had a dominant defenseman worthy of a list like this. I think Riley has been on this list at times throughout his career, but certainly no longer there at this point. What I did find interesting, though, is the fact that they didn't have a player on the top 20 list. The rest of the teams within the division did. Yet, if you look at the blue line as a collective, as you were mentioning, they might be the second best blue line in the Atlantic Division, maybe even the best collective blue line in the Atlantic Division. Like
Mhm.
it's kind of interesting when you kind of size it up. I think maybe Boston's got a pretty good blue line, Florida with Gus Forsling, and now Seth Jones. Maybe Florida's got the best, I would say, in terms of blue line, but Toronto, you could argue, is probably right there, maybe with the second best in the division.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And it's kind of interesting though that Toronto's been able to remain as competitive as they have, like throughout all this, without that true number one guy. Like I always like it's not easy. Like you don't have, like LA could just throw Drew Doughty out there for 30
Yeah.
minutes a night,
Well,
right?
you could argue that yes, they've been competitive, but it's also maybe part of the reason why they've never truly broke through
Yeah.
also. So like a blessing and a curse in a way. Like it's nice that they have uh 6 quality NHL defensemen, but they don't have that true guy, that true game changer, game breaker, that can, act as a dominant force out there. So yeah, it's just kind of an interesting little tidbit that I noticed. I was reading the NHL.com piece. It's like, no Leafs. But I'm like, but there are multiple defensemen within the division that are up there. But yep, I'd still probably take Toronto's blue line over as a collective over a lot of those teams within the division. In terms of top 100 talent, there is one defenseman that I think deserves some consideration. We'll get to our list of the players that we have considered for the NHL's top 100. That's next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever to find concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting to concert tickets faster and easier. Prices eventually drop as the closer it gets to showtime. You can save up to 60% off with their killer last minute deals. If you're tired of endless scrolling, try and find the best deals. Game Time's Zone Deals picks the best seats for you. I'm going to the Jays game later today. I use Game Time to get my tickets, and I was able to find them great. I got a great price using the Zone Deals part of the app particularly. And the best part that I like about Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. There are no hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert, show, or sporting event tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf Centric podcast. You can find us free and available wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever you're looking to get your pods from. We're here 3 days a week for now, and then we get back to 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, wall-to-wall coverage of the Toronto Maple Leafs starting up when training camp returns. And by then, Dave, we will have unveiled the Locked On NHL's top 100 list. And as I was noting earlier in the show, the Locked On Network has tasked all the hosts to come up with players who should be in consideration for us to kind of narrow it down to a top 100. And then we all got to put our list together, and it'll be aggregated, and that's how we're going to end up with a top 100 list curated by the entire Locked On NHL network. So to me, there are actually, I'm going to pose this question to you, right? Like we're going to narrow it down to 5 guys for today's show, little Friday 5-pack. But how many players do you think should be in consideration for top 100 status?
I think 3 for sure. 4, you can make a case for 4,
Okay.
in my opinion.
4, you can make a case for 4, but you've got 3 locks. Who
Yes.
are those guys? And we can get into it right now. It's going to be no surprise that Austin Matthews will be on this list, probably somewhere in top 10 for sure. Top 10. Where in that 10, I think will be interesting to see what our colleagues around the league believe when it comes to Austin Matthews. William Nylander will certainly be on that list as well. There's absolutely no question that Willie is a top 100 talent. I think he was top 20, top 30 on most lists last year. And then Tavares, I think, is still considered a top 100 talent, especially coming off the season that he had a year ago. And then you get to the question marks at that point. And we'll get to those in just a moment. But let's focus on those top three for now and kind of make the case for maybe how high on the list they should be. Austin Matthews. There was a time where Austin Matthews was considered a no doubt top 3 to 5 player in the NHL, maybe top 2 to 4 player in the NHL. A couple of years ago when he, first had that run to 60, won the Rocket, won, the Ted Lindsay, ended up winning league MVP. He was one of the best players on the planet that season. He had a down year last year, and now he's without Mitch Marner, which a lot of people, think we might see even more of a decline there, in particular when it comes to his statistics. But where would you have Austin Matthews ranked on your list of your top, 100, but virtually top 10? I imagine you still have him in your top 10.
Yeah, absolutely. I still think there's a case for him to be a top 5 player in this league, right? I know there's you look, okay, McDavid, lock in number 1.
Yep.
You've got Nathan McKinnon, you got Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah, I think those are locks top 3.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the top 3 lock for me. And then there's a conversation from 4 to 6 or 7. You could probably throw in 3 or 4 different guys that could be in that mix for after the top 3. Matthews is in that same mix.
Yeah, look, you also have to consider a guy like Cale Makar, right? Who you throw that guy in there, no doubt he's a top 5 player in this league, right? And that's where the jockeying of position comes, right? We know Matthews is good enough, but does he get himself above a Cale Makar?
Or even Kucherov, right? Like a winger center dynamic type of thing, right?
Exactly.
That more. Kucherov put up more points. Kucherov led the league in points last year. He's one of the most dynamic players in the NHL, but he plays the wing. Matthews plays, right? So it's you kind of have to equate those in a way. Barkov is certainly in that same conversation as a borderline top 5 guy in the NHL. So I think those 4 that we just talked about, Makar, Kucherov, Barkov, and then Matthews, I would say are probably the 4 guys you could jockey it in any which way, and I'll be okay with it.
Yeah, no, and that's really where obviously there is people will look at this and say we're slighting Matthews. There'll be some of that. Some people say we're ranking him too high. This is the thing about rankings, right? You can never be, no one will ever be kind of set on certain players. There are, as we said, the locks, and then there will be a total debate well after that. So, but I think with Austin Matthews, I think even he would agree. Things didn't really go his way last year. He's got to kind of get himself back into the picture a little bit and put himself in a position to remind people why he is among the top 5 players in the league.
100%. Next on the list is going to be William Nylander as we continue on with our Friday 5-pack. 5 Maple Leafs who are top 100 worthy of consideration. Not that they are top 100, but worthy of consideration. The locks here, Matthews, Nylander, and Tavares, obviously. But Willie, this is a player who has broken out over the course of the last 3 years. He's been, on most of the big, the mainstream top 50 lists now for 2 or 3 years. He is certainly a guy who is going to be on this list and probably going to be relatively high on this list. I know I'll have Willie in my top 25, when I go through and do my top 100. I'm going to be curious to see who ranks higher for you, Nylander or Marner, because that was last year a big talking point where a lot of people had Nylander above, but it was kind of 50-50 about who had Nylander above. I think TSN and Sportsnet's top 50 lists both ranked Nylander ahead of Marner, if I'm not mistaken. Very close. It was very close, but or one of them ranked him over the other. But I remember that being a massive talking point coming off the list last year. And with Marner now gone and in Vegas, and maybe some sour grapes about that whole situation, I'm curious to see if Nylander kind of leapfrogs Marner, or if the new fresh start, allows Marner to kind of grow a little bit more. Those are two players when this list eventually drops. I'd be curious to see who's ranked ahead of who.
Yeah, I do think that Marner has taken a bit of a push up over Nylander just because he's the more complete player. He puts up points. Now Nylander is by far the better goal scorer, right?
Yes.
And I think the playoff production is better from Nylander, but like Nylander has his shortcomings as a defensive player, and that's why people always rank him. A lot of people rank him lower. Or
Yeah, I remember
frankly,
I should go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it might have been this. It was either Sportsnet or TSM. One of those top 50 lists had Nylander ahead of Marner, and I lost my cool. I'm like, this is ridiculous, and I still, quite frankly, believe that Marner is the better player, should be the better player, which is just why I think it's very polarizing and going to be interesting to see what the rest of our network thinks. I would think Marner would get a little bit more love
yeah.
than Nylander, but definitely gonna be an intriguing thing for me. Tavares, he fell out of a lot of top 50 lists last year. What he did at age 35, scoring 38 goals, do you think that inches him closer back into that top 50, or you think at the age he is kind of keeps him on the outside looking in again?
Well, here's the thing: like these top 100 lists, it's like top 100 going into this season, not necessarily what they've done in the past, right?
Right.
But I still think the guy is still like he scored 38 goals. Like
Playing with Nylander, he's gonna play with Nylander again.
Like he is going to be putting up a good amount of goals again this year. He actually, in my opinion, he had one of his better seasons in over the last few years. People were wondering if the guy was still a 2C. Nobody was really saying that last year under Craig Berube, him under Craig Berube. So I think he still has enough juice to be in the top 100. I think maybe there are definitely second line centers who, on some other teams that have good numbers, but like he's been steady production. He's still, I think, even going into this year with Marner gone, on the power play, maybe that's where he gets maybe a new lease on life. Maybe he plays a different role than what he has done. He was the net front guy. Maybe he gets a little more of an offensive role. Like I think there's still, I think, an opportunity for JT to be a prominent player going into this season.
Yeah, I totally agree. So those are the three locks that I know, or damn well should be on the top 100 list. If they're not, I'm gonna have to fight some people within the network if they leave any of those three players off their lists.
Yeah.
There are three other guys, in my opinion, who are worthy of consideration. We'll get to those next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. You like Josh Allen? You like Lamar Jackson? Take a flyer on one of those two to win MVP this year, and you can do that on FanDuel. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only, August 26th on FanDuel. Play your game. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti. We are having a discussion of the players that the Maple Leafs should consider for a NHL's top 100 list. So we went through the locks previously, and Austin Matthews is one, William Nylander is another, John Tavares, definitely a top 100 player. at the very least. 50, we'll see, but certainly a top 100 player in the NHL. You said that you think you can make the case for 4. I think there's a case to be made for possibly as many as 6, but I'm curious who the 4th guy on your list could be.
Oh, it's Matthew Nyes.
Mm.
Yeah, he's, we know this. He can play. He can score 30. He's in that rare breed of players, right? That can play two-way power forward. He hasn't reached his ceiling yet as a player. We know that there's a lot more that he can do, more he can provide. The contract states that. I think his role states that too, as a top line player playing with Austin Matthews. So I think that he's in for a big season himself, like to see himself go, to reach new heights as a player. So yeah, I think for sure in doing the nomination list, like he was definitely one. Like when we're asked to do 4 players, he was the 4th one that came up every single time I'm doing my list.
I just thought of a great nickname for that line. If Matias Maccelli wins that top line spot alongside Matthew Nyes and Austin Matthews, the obvious nickname for that line, the Desert Line.
Oh.
Is that not a perfect nickname for Nyes, Matthews, and Maccelli? Like you got both Nyes and Matthews who come from Arizona. I think both Scottsdale, if I'm not mistaken. And then also obviously Matias Maccelli came from the Arizona Coyotes organization. So that'd be a great nickname. I'm putting some stock on that one, by the way. You heard it here first on the Locked On Leafs podcast. We'll be calling that the Desert Line moving forward if that in fact does become a regular trio that we see here in the 25-26 NHL season. I'm with you. I think Matthew Nyes certainly is worthy of consideration and might actually make my list. Like I think that he actually is no, you know what? He's going to make my list. I think Matthew Nyes is a top 100 player in the NHL right now. I mean, what he did in the playoffs, like how instrumental was he for this team? You could argue he was their best player in the postseason, and that's what makes a man in the NHL is how do you perform when the chips are down in the playoffs? And Nyes, I mean, one of the best for the Maple Leafs. Like he was second to only Nylander in goals. And the second that he got hurt and was really a non-factor in the last couple of games against Florida, like that was kind of very evident that he was the shell of himself in those games, and it hurt Toronto because they need him to be, at his heights. That's when this team is at their best. And I think he's the top 100 talent for sure. You noted, like he scored 29 goals in just his second season in the NHL. He hasn't reached his full potential yet. He's killing penalties now as well. He's a great back checker, forechecker, and a guy with great hands in and around the net. So for me, Nyes, 100% actually. I'm almost ready to make him a lock as a top 100 player. It's like a 98% lock that he should be in the top 100. I hope the rest of our colleagues, paid attention to what he was doing in the playoffs and throughout the regular season. Still scored 29 goals and rewards him with a top 100 spot. The other 2 players, though, that I probably wouldn't rank in the top 100, but I could make the argument for is Chris Tanev and Anthony Stolarz. Now, Stolarz, he had an unbelievable season. If you're going based on last year specifically, I think you could easily make the argument that he was a top 100 player last year. But that was really it, right? That was his first season where he was a starter. And even then, he was like a 1A starter for the Maple Leafs. But, I mean, you can't deny the numbers. Like, he was fantastic a year ago. So Stolarz is a guy who you might be able to have that conversation about down the road if he can replicate last year's success this season. And then the other guy is, to me, Chris Tanev. I think deserves, some at least consideration here, because although he doesn't have the flashy numbers that you typically like defensemen to put up when you put them in these types of categories, the guy's a prolific defender. Like he kills plays. He's got an unbelievable stick. He blocks shots. Like he is a great defender, and we've seen what it looks like with and without Tanev. And let me tell you, the lineup far better when he's in it than when he's not. So, Chris Tanev is a guy not going to get a lot of notoriety because he does a lot of the little things well, but he is someone who probably should be at least in consideration for some top 100 love, I would think. So those are kind of the three other guys next to Matthews, Nylander, Tavares that I think at least belong in the conversation. But I would say Nye's most so, with a bit more question marks on Tanev and Stolarz.
Yeah, like I thought about Tanev just because we know that he's a pure shutdown defenseman. Doesn't get a lot of love for his ability to be a top shutdown defenseman.
Should get love. Like, I guarantee you, Jacob Slavin's going to be on the list.
Jacob Slavin's on every single, he's on the top 20, right?
Yeah,
for the NHL.
Right?
Right.
Yeah,
that has value. You don't necessarily always need your defenseman to be.
He's eighth. He's eighth on the NHL's top list.
And he's not an offensive dynamite. He's just there because, when he's on the ice, pucks aren't usually going in the net. And that was the same for Chris Tanev too. So I think there's definitely an argument to be made there for that. And I get it. He's maybe not the flashiest player, but again, defensemen aren't always expected to be the flashiest. Just do your job and help keep the puck out of your own net. And Chris Tanev is among the best at doing that.
He had a plus 31 goal differential when he was on the ice this year with Toronto. Plus 31 goal differential. And he is a shutdown guy who took on a lot of hard minutes against some tough matchups in the defensive zone. Yet he still was on the ice for 31 more goals for than against. What more can you ask for out of a guy?
Yeah. And then with the Stolarz conversation, I get it. The numbers are great. The only thing that obviously people will say is that's more of a tandem, right? And now he was the better goalie of the tandem statistically last year.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at goalies that get into the top 100, it's usually guys that are bona fide, clear-cut number ones, right? The Vasilevsky, Shesterkins, and those. That's not Stolarz, but his numbers were not that far off from those guys either, right? You can't just and that's the only reason why I wouldn't have nominated him, just because I know there's other goalies that would get more love, but he should be at least talked about.
Here's the interesting thing about Stolarz. It took him a little bit to, he was drafted in 2012. Spent a long time in kind of going between the American League and the NHL. He spent his first 3 years solely in the American League and then broke into the NHL in 2016-17 with the Philadelphia Flyers. And he never really stuck around full time there. He went to Edmonton for a little bit. He had a 6-game stint there. They probably should have kept him a little longer, I would think, considering what he turned into. Anaheim had some success there and then backed up Bobrovsky the year prior to coming here in Toronto. But you look at the last 4 seasons for him, where he's finally established himself as a full-time NHL goaltender. He's got a .917 save percentage in 21-22, followed by a bit of a down year, .899 save percentage, but that Ducks team was horrendous that year. Then he goes to Florida, .925 save percentage and a .926 save percentage this year in Toronto. He's been pretty solid for 4 years now. So I'm excited to see what he can do this upcoming season, and I won't be surprised if a season from now, that's what I was trying to get to, people are taking a much heavier look at Anthony Stolarz as a top 100 talent. He can replicate what he did last year with Toronto in year 2.
Yeah, I know exactly, right? There'll be a lot of people. I think the expectation too, right? Last year, there wasn't that expectation for him to have those numbers. Now, first off, let's see. Can he played, he started 33 games, played 34, right? Will we see an uptick of that to even in the 40 range?
Yeah.
That
too. So there's some money on the board for him to
exactly
do that this year also, right?
So when we talk about why the Leafs are still a team to be competitive, despite some conversations I've had with other people about whether they're even a playoff team, look at their goaltending, right? There are a lot of teams that don't have the goaltending the Leafs have with that 1-2 punch with him and Joseph Woll. Now, that could change if both have their struggles, but considering what both of them provided last year, I think a lot of teams will take that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with what they got in net, and trust me, considering the tandems or even any starter that they've had over the course of the last like 20 years, I've never felt this confidence in goal as I do now with Stolars and Joseph Woll. All right, so there it is. Those are to us the kind of 6 players that are most deserving of top 100 consideration. I would say 5 guys for sure are in consideration, with Stolars being a bit more of an asterisk and a question mark, an honorable mention, if you will, and someone who might work their way in next year if he can replicate the success from a season ago. So there's your Friday 5-pack. I'm not exactly sure. There's no date for when this comes out yet,
Not
right?
yet.
No, we're just kind of curating the list now, and within the next few weeks, I'm sure we'll have it all ready to go and ready to unveil to our loyal Locked On listeners. So make sure you just kind of keep tabs on what's going on here. Visit us every day wherever you get your podcasts, and also on YouTube. Again, 3 shows a week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, throughout the rest of the summer, and then we get back to daily coverage once the boys get back for training camp, Monday to Friday. So subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and also on YouTube. That'll do it for us here today on the show. Follow me on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. You can follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. It's Locked On Leafs on Instagram as well. We'll be back with another episode for you guys on Monday. Enjoy your weekends. Go Leafs, go. Till then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.